Check 1, 2.
Are you taking questions during, or are you going to do it at the end?
Yeah, can.
I just wanted, it might be more interesting for us to do it at the end if you do questions at the end.
Yeah, it's 30 minutes and then 10 at the end.
Okay, well, ask some of us to join at the end. Then.
It's literally the same.
I know, that's why we'll join at the end and then
cool. Yeah.
get involved with the questions.
Perfect. Andrew. Were you here earlier? No. Okay.
Maybe you need clicker.
Does it work? Okay. Great.
Try please.
Mm-hmm.
Second.
There we go. Good. Okay. Yeah, pretty quick. Maybe a minute. It's the same one.
But I've got a new question.
Oh, great. How are we doing? Nope. All right, just to warn all the BidSwitch folks in the room, if you were at the presentation that we gave earlier, it's the same content. So I don't want you to feel like you just wasted 30 minutes because it's the same presentation. Actually, take out some of the slides here so it's even smaller. Yeah, just a warning. Good, so I assume everyone else wants to see it again. Okay, good. That's great. All right, hi everyone. I'm Barry Adams. I'm the new GM of BidSwitch. I'm co-presenting with Aleksei Matiunin, who is our new VP of Product. So you have two fairly new people in new roles. So I think what you're going to see is that there's probably a little bit of detail that's missing because both of us are really focused on trying to understand some of the details of what's been going on in different functions of the business. So we're kind of conducting a bit of an audit on the past year or even more. There are projects that have been lingering for a long time that we're looking at, trying to evaluate. We're looking at the budgets, we're looking at all these things. So some of the questions you may have, which we can try and answer at the end, we may not have all the details together. But what we wanted to give you is sort of a high-level directional view. From me, you'll be getting mostly the kind of the negative side of things, which is the stuff about headwinds. So we were given the topic, the headwinds, or market headwinds and the path forward. So I'll be speaking mostly about the headwinds, and my young colleague will give you the better news about the path forward. If you have questions, probably just save them for the end, and then we'll talk for 10 minutes then. All right, headwinds. So this is the summary I made, which is I usually try to put things into a sentence or two to see if it makes sense. This is, I think, what characterizes the situation that we're in with BidSwitch. So if you look back historically, BidSwitch had many successful years, and it's still doing very well. Historically, though, it was built around a couple of premises. One was that OpenRTB was going to be the future of programmatic, and that everything was going to be traded via OpenRTB. That was kind of the hope, at least, right? So that meant that all the different types of inventory would all get connected this way. We'd have start with display, and then we'd have mobile and video and native and video and TV and audio and all the rest. So that was one kind of assumption or hope that we had. The other was that all of this growth in RTB and programmatic would mean more and more and more platforms, which would mean a bigger reason to connect through BidSwitch. So the larger the number of players, SSPs and DSPs, the more valuable our proposition, because we're connecting many to one, right, or one to many. So the challenge we face now is that that's not quite true anymore. So what you're seeing is the opposite, in fact. So the rise of private marketplace and deals has meant that, to some extent, OpenRTB is less important to a lot of traders. The other thing is that basically there is now going on a consolidation in the industry. So rather than a large number of brand new entrants, SSPs and DSPs, we're seeing a small number of very large players take up all the spend, right? So I'll talk through that in a little more detail. So if we talk about the headwinds here, so some more of the detail here, I've talked about consolidation. So the list of acquisitions this last year is quite long. You've got folks like AT&T recently buying AppNexus, Verizon with Oath, Sysmic with Rocket Fuel, the list goes on. There's an awful lot of consolidation going on. Now, that we have to respond to that. So I'll talk about the tactics that we're doing, but what's also happening alongside this is walled gardening is kind of probably what we're going to see the trend around. And so there's a deep suspicion that AT&T will become a walled garden over time, which presents an opportunity because some of that AppNexus supply will get locked away from buyers. So for all of these challenges, there are opportunities, but I'm going to highlight mostly the challenges. The other big trend that we're seeing a lot of is a huge focus, and this isn't new this year, it's been going on for a while, a very big focus though on transparency and disintermediation. So there are many, many, many players. If you ever look at the Lumascape, does everyone know that? So you take a look at the Lumascape and look how many players are in there. And if you talk to the average advertiser or agency, they don't know who any of those companies are. They're confused. And so when they look at where a given impression comes from a publisher all the way to the end advertiser, they're lost in what's going on. So there's a lot of pressure coming from the brands to say, no, I need to see where all this money's going. I need to see where that impression went. I need to see how it got from me to this person. And so things like ads.txt, which was actually kind of a Google initiative secretly, is putting a lot of pressure on pushing out reselling activities, creating a lot more transparency. Now, all of this is probably for the good over time, but in the near term, what it does is feed the biggest players, right? Namely Google in this case. So in addition to all that, people are asking for exposure of all the fees or the take rates or the ad tech tax or whatever you want to call it. And so BidSwitch is in a funny spot because we are not a DSP and we're not an SSP. So we don't fit into a traditional category that someone can just go, oh yeah, there's the SSP fee. They always have to explain what our fee is because is it a tech fee? It's a media fee? What's it for? So this is always a challenge for us, and it kind of relates to brand perception. So some of these things are interwoven. There's also a big push for direct. I'll talk about this a little bit more. There's a big move, I've talked about private marketplace, an ongoing emphasis on the quality side of things. So this is fraud, this is brand safety, it's viewability, it's all that stuff. And different companies have introduced their own standards. And partly they're doing this because they're trying to claw back revenue. They're saying, I'm not going to pay you for stuff that I think is fraud. So there's things like MRC accreditation, which we're now working on to help address that. Privacy, also huge now. Everyone's aware of GDPR, right? Global Data Protection Regulation, lots of fun. So this went into effect May 25th. It has impacted everyone's revenues. I think every business in this space has been impacted. Businesses outside this space, in medicine and other areas, have all been impacted. So this is huge. And we think, and it looks like there's a lot of signal that this will go beyond just Europe. So the United States and different states is looking at kind of different versions of GDPR. Asia will start to look at different versions of this. So we think this is here to stay and it could have a longer term impact. Now there's also opportunities here around, for example, building privacy solutions or passing signals that help our buyers manage this more effectively. Right now, there's a lot of confusion still. There are many companies that are pretty unclear on their status. So this is going to take time to settle down. Consent and e-privacy are related. So e-privacy is the regulations that are going to come out fairly soon after GDPR. Here's one of the spots I want to put a little more emphasis on because it's more in our sweet spot. So trading efficiency is a problem for a lot of players. And the reasons are now you have to operate at scale to be competitive at all anymore. So a lot of the long tail players are feeling a ton of pressure or they're just collapsing. So you need to trade at scale, and trading at scale costs a lot of money in an environment dominated by header bidding and these kinds of things because you're seeing a lot higher volumes of traffic that you need to listen to and route. So we're pretty well suited for this environment. So this part is good for us. The rest of it, maybe not so good. So here, we're very good at understanding auction dynamics and helping buyers buy more intelligently or efficiently. So True Price is a perfect example. We have things that we're working on with header bidding, et cetera. SPO, obviously, or PDE, or what was is it PDE, Nikita? OPD, got it, yeah. So all of these things are kind of play to our strengths, right? So we're helping folks trade more efficiently, and with scale, that's a big, very important thing. Okay, some more detail on this disintermediation game that's going on. So it's happening on multiple fronts, right? So in one layer, large DSPs and agencies are trying to go directly to access inventory directly. And that's by bypassing SSPs, for example. And then buyers, so this could be advertisers and publishers, they're wanting to see where everything's going. So this kind of just more on the point I made earlier. Now, specific to BidSwitch, one of the things that we've really come to notice very clearly is that one of our biggest problems and why we see pressure for folks to do a direct connection is it's because the SSPs involved will go to agencies to force a direct connection with the DSP, right? Because we do things like use smart switching, which they just call filtering. They just think we're blocking inventory. So all these things create pressure from SSPs to agencies, which creates pressure on our business. So we have to address this. PMPs, we're getting some of the pie, something like 20% of the revenues right now from a much lower volume of trading, but about 20% of our revenues are linked to private deals. That's below what it should be, we think, and it's below what others comparably would be trading, say AppNexus. So we're mostly led through product approach, but also through how we engage with clients. We need to address this and get more of that private deals spend. Last point here, which we'll say more about when we go to Aleksei, is just we will have to play nicely with all these very big players where consolidation is happening, but I think our real opportunity longer term is also with these tier 2 DSPs and SSPs who right now are feeling a ton of pressure. They're not able to handle the infrastructure costs as well as they could before because of things like header bidding. They're under a lot of pressure because all the consolidation that's happening with the biggest players. So they're being kind of forced out. Agencies aren't selecting them in pitches, all the rest of it. If you look at folks like even MediaMath or DataZoo, who were considered tier 1 players for a long time, they're getting kicked off that list. And there are opportunities there for us because we are very good at some of the things they're not so good at. Next up, so if you guys know what a black hole is, there's a thing called the event horizon, and if you get too close to a black hole, you get caught in it and then you disappear. So I thought it was an analogy for working with Google. On the one hand, we need the revenue. It's half our revenues, right? It's a lot of money. On the other hand, they are extremely hard to negotiate with. They're hard to deal with. They squeeze you more and more and more. So while we want to make as much as we can, you want what they call escape velocity, so you can get enough speed to get out of there if you have to. So we want to make as much as we can on one hand, but also not rely too much on Google and have a bit more growth coming out of the tier 2. So what are we doing for Google? Well, quite a lot. We've been spending many months negotiating a new contract with them. It means that we will move to Google's numbers. Now, the backstory to this is basically that this was caused by a large discrepancy that they just didn't want to deal with, right? So rather than deal with the discrepancy and kind of handle it like a normal contract, they just said, no, we just move everything to our numbers. So that's $1.7 million we're trying to recover from that. The other thing is, by moving to their numbers, they tell us they're going to activate many more connections on DBM2. We can also reactivate Yahoo, who we've paused. Everyone's heard about flexible fee allocation by now? Yes, supply side fees, it's also called internally. I see a head shaking. So the very quick backstory, and I don't want to get into his time too much, is partly because of pressure from Google and also because we saw an opportunity, we're introducing the ability for an SSP to take our fee, the BidSwitch trading fee, and they pay it rather than the DSP. So historically, Google has been trading at under 5% with us because there's a CPM cap and other things. We can actually charge the supply side over 6.5% if we move the fees to them. So we actually make a bit of money doing this. It's painful because we have to do new contracts with like 75 people. That's a big focus right now. The other thing is we're more and more becoming kind of a gatekeeper for Google and for others. So basically they won't speak to a lot of these SSPs. They'll only do through us, which is good in a way because it gives us a lot of, let's say, leverage or power with SSPs, but it's also puts us in a kind of frustration spot because everyone's always angry about things. Anyway, we also have a lot of focus on trying to incubate A9, who we were always hoping would be like the next Google. We think that strategically they probably won't be, and that even as early as next year they could shut a lot of things down, including a lot of SSPs. So they may go from friend to threat at some point, not too far from now. The trade desk has been a tough one. Their strategy hasn't been very aligned to ours. They do direct connections for everything. We think there are tactics to improve on this, and I'll touch on it briefly. And then I mentioned this tier 2 support. So
just a quick note on this slide. So
yep.
buy-side fee is a flexible fee assignment, SSF. So this is from your platform, looks like a combined contract for supply, when your platform services and BidSwitch services are in the same contract. So this is the same approach we use for external clients, but for different kind of cost pricing points. Just to explain where this is coming from.
yeah, that's probably a good segue because I think I'm going to hand it over to you now. So I gave you all the bad news. He'll start to share the good news.
Yeah, so the following part is, like Barry mentioned, is not going to be strategy because we both are new to the role. And one of our top priorities for now is to set a strategy, like to make it be more explicit and determine exact focus areas when we do what we do. So this is coming. Thinking about to make it be a part of the strategy, just to give you some insight around the direction they're thinking.
Do you want me to drive?
Yeah. So one of the things is trading efficiency. This is basically what we were already investing in the past year. It's about managing auction dynamic, making this managing easy for the DSP who doesn't want to invest into this. So we built True Price, which had a pretty high adoption. We still have more clients to adopt it, like especially bigger and slower ones, such as MediaMouth, Seismic, A9, like all of them are considering using True Price and moving connections, especially first price based connections over to BidSwitch. There's also a few initiatives linked to the analytical reports and I don't know, like analytical consulting to SSPs, how they can improve trading. So it's performance report, analytics, etc., which can help SSPs trade more efficiently. Supply side fees and demand activation is basically the way we also can help. Like, let me clarify this bit. So this is what we're actually doing right now already is supply, but when SSP is ready to pay, now they can request a connection to a DSP, which was never happening before. And this is again for those who work in supply view, is also valuable because it also applies to SSPs with combined contract. So now SSPs can actually request connection. So there are certain things we do and consider doing around duplication, deduplication, smart switch improvements, and many other things about trading efficiency. So basically, we have a pressure, intermediation pressure, and so there are less and less companies who are solving problems, and we are in the right place to actually solve the ecosystem problem and catch the wind. So another example of another initiative is so-called MAF Switch. Is a project which is in the exploration stage. So basically it's about inquiries from bigger DSPs who want us to basically do more for their connections, and so like provide more managed service to manage their supply. Leveraging the tools we have, the capability to do custom targeting, custom services, and even like managed service to help them navigate through their new RTB space where we have pretty much expertise. And so given it's getting wider because like DSPs are having a high pressure from well-known giants, and some of them need to catch up, and this is where we can help them with our expertise and technologies. Private deals is a whole big space, and this is basically a direction which is heavily linked with other initiatives in IPAM web. So it's not like it's not local to BidSwitch. However, this initiative is also about solving the problem that we underinvest into servicing private deals trading, and resulted in a lower share of private deals trading in BidSwitch rather than on the ecosystem. And again, this is about leveraging the place in the ecosystem when we sit across everything, and this is where we can also bring value to simplify and streamline deals trading, deals negotiation, including the things like make it be more efficient and cheaper for publishers, like to avoid 10%-ish SSP fees on deals, which is ridiculous. We know we can do more efficiently. We also can leverage technologies we have, like budgeting, control server technologies, to handle guaranteed deals, which where publishers SSPs struggle to manage, while this is a hot topic as well. So there are many other things we can potentially do, so it's yet another direction and area what we are considering. There's another one is transparency and control. So this is more about turning the thing our partners are complaining about BidSwitch into the benefit. There are certain things which we consider on supply side. Which is supposed to accompany flexible fee assignment, like a supply side fees. Like when we make SSPs be our paying client, it actually makes sense that we provide more service towards SSPs and more transparency and more control. While historically we were more, as in BidSwitch, were focusing to service DSPs. So what we are doing and considering doing is again, analytics reports for SSPs, dashboards, trading performance analytics, which will help them adjust floors, for example, or set up trading, help with deal activation, managing open and private deals. So this is where the deals initiative kind of intersects, and many other things which we feel we can help SSPs. On demand side is more about letting DSPs have what we actually want from BidSwitch, be able to control smart switch the way they like, or being able to do sophisticated targeting. This actually is pretty much relevant to U-platform DSPs, because some of them have very sophisticated logic, and BidSwitch is in the right place in the ecosystem to help efficiently manage this. So this is what we also heavily considering being strategy. And also, like Barry mentioned, there is things happening in the industry about regulations introduced. Like we have 2 big regulations introduced during last year. It's GDPR and Net60, and many players in the ecosystem are struggling to handle this, to understand what's this about. They really need help. So what we consider doing is to carry on helping with existing regulations and even in the future. So it's more like a utility service. So basically, the goal here is like when you trade for BidSwitch, you don't need to bother, right? So it's a headwind turned out into the opportunity in a sense. There's another kind of opportunity. It's just an example. So display, video, like premium display, it's all very crowded and it's all in private deals, so it's a whole different ecosystem and trading, while in-app is still treated like a pile of garbage mostly, and buyers really have hard time to navigate and find the actual kind of valuable pieces of inventory. And it's still like, we hear it from all around that it's still a problem to solve, and there is no bulletproof solution. And we think that the combination of our technology assets, our experience, and our position in the ecosystem, including relationship with other players, can help us build comprehensive solution DSPs and agencies are looking for to handle in-app quality problem. Again, this is not it is not limited about what we consider is not limited only about what I say, but this is just to give you a directional understanding of what we are considering.
The Forrest Gump slide. All right, I'll share the last. This seen Forrest Gump, you know, when the guy's in the boat and it's terrible weather and it's really awful, and then he gets to the other side. Anyway, and then he gets bubblegum shrimp. So there's just a couple things to highlight some of the things we were talking about. So one of the ideas here is just tactically and strategically, we want to make sure we're embedded with the winners of the consolidation game. So that's Google, Amazon, the Trade Desk, hopefully. We want to empower these tier 2 players with some of the tools that Aleksei's been talking about. There's this emerging idea of this SSP to agency strategy, which we've been sort of slow to pick up, which is by offering better tools, better service to SSPs, we reduce their desire to go to agencies and complain about us, for one thing. Right? The other is that it's possible through something like a deals marketplace to actually have them be proactively in favor of what we're doing. So this is kind of part product and part approach in the market. Obviously, we talked about monetizing private deals. These are connected. We talked about monetizing potentially quality. So through MRC accreditation. Once you have the MRC accreditation, effectively what it means is that people don't argue with you when you say something's fraud. And also that they will pay you to tell someone else that what they have is or isn't fraud. So this is something we can actually charge for once the accreditation is done. So Chris isn't here now, but he's our operations director. He'll be overseeing, together with some folks maybe in the room, our audit for that. That takes several months, but once it's done, we think there's a lot of value there. And then finally, this is the one that's probably the most important. We haven't gotten into a lot of the details of what goes on in trying to execute something like this flexible fee allocation. It's a ton of work. So right now, it's all about trying to get all of this tightened up and done so that all of our agreements are completed. We have everything working in the UI properly, and that the transition for the biggest buyers like DBM happens without a lot of pain. And if all of those things can be executed before the end of Q3, we should have quite a strong Q4. So that's really the final message is Q3 is just all about Q4. So with that, I think we can take a few questions. We probably went a little late. Questions?
Well, the question basically
Oh!
is, we need to grow in many directions to achieve these things. And the question is basically, how do we make sure that we are growing in the right needed directions at this species as a whole? And to align each team and every part of this species, what framework, what rules we will follow, something like that.
Okay, if I can answer that, I would be Boris, but no, I'm kidding. The first part is it takes you have to do everything step by step. So the plan that Aleksei's got for the product team is really to consolidate things. My high level thing is we need to bring all the smart people in this company closer together to make better decisions. I don't make very many decisions on my own, so I always try and find someone smarter than me who knows this topic better than I do. But starting with product, we had kind of 3 product groups. That was tricky and difficult and led to, I'd say, a lot of challenges. So one of the things we'll do in product is just eliminate those silos, bring all that together. As far as how you ensure that you'll never be in trouble in the market, that's tough. It's a tough market. I think we have a very strong position in a bunch of ways. We see stuff that no one else really sees. So when you talk to someone like a MediaMac, they know we're very strong on the engineering side. They know that we see a lot of traffic, and leveraging on those things for supporting clients like that is a big value proposition. I think, like I said, these are kind of the other steps which will help. Does that answer the question?
I can actually add to this slightly from a different angle. So what we are going to do, the next steps, is to, like, you've been to the HR session yesterday, right? So I totally understand this, and this is very important, and this is one of my top priorities, is to have a clear strategy, everybody understanding why, what for, and the place in that strategy for every person in BidSwitch. So this is very important, and this is what me and Barry are going to invest a lot in improving. So this is one thing. Second thing, like Barry said, we are improving efficiency of collaboration in the BidSwitch. What it means? Basically, it means we can make decisions quicker, execute decisions quicker, and come up and understand when we need to change and pivot quicker. So basically the goal, the market is changing very fast, and we need to be faster. So we do all to make us flexible and agile enough to be able to react on the current situation and the future situation much faster. This is what we need to, this is the only way we can achieve success. And the third time, yeah, be ready to pivot, so, because things are happening, and we need to be the first ones.
Awesome. Aleksei?
Yes.
You mentioned 2 features. You mentioned improving smart switch and intelligent QPS control. Can you say more about those things?
Again, those are considerations. It's not even, like, this is what we were doing. So regarding smart switch, is more about smart switch should work differently for different kind of DSPs, and this is what we understand. There are certain gaps in efficiency, and we are considering investing into improving it for certain cases, more like this. If you talk about smart switch efficiency, there's a whole bunch, like a whole area around transparency and control. It's like perceptive efficiency, which is different. Regarding QPS, so this is about, like, many our DSPs are valuing us because they let them efficiently control QPS, right? So, although some of them might complain, but managing QPS, meaning managing their costs, and providing more analytical information of how it's done, how they can affect it, to align more to what how DSP operates. This is what we can totally do, and it's pretty close to that. Does it answer your question?
I think I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Andre, so we got a front bias here, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, we'll go to the back.
Having worked at an agency with the SSP and agency strategy, have you gotten feedback from the agency side on what they're looking for out of their supply partners? Because for the most part, when I was buying, it didn't matter where the inventory came from as long as that was scale and performance, but who it was coming from wasn't really something that they latched on to.
Wow, there's a lot to say about that. So, and how heavy were private deals trading when you were at the agency?
A lot.
Is that right? So the way I perceive it, and I'm not an expert, I don't work in an agency, but is that there's a lot of the SSPs going in packaging up deals for the agency. So the relationships matter, right? And so I think maybe they're looking for where the deal sits more than saying which SSP. It's down to those relationships. I think our view is it's kind of a two-part thing. One is there are certain SSPs who are more hostile than others towards us, and that they've somehow talked some agencies to being a little more negative than others. So some of them have actually had us blocked on trading in like whole regions by large trading groups. So, you know, step one is that we need to diffuse that sort of behavior, right? Which is like, usually it's because they're misrepresenting what we do or lying flat out. So we need to do a few things, but at the end of the day, part of our challenge is we're resource constrained. We don't have hundreds of people to go talking to agencies. We have a very small team. And that team's expertise is in talking to SSPs and DSPs. So we're a bit more technical, a little less sort of agency talk and all that. So we're going to play to our strengths, which is try and win over the SSPs more and have them do that work for us, because we just don't have the resources right now to do it. There will be point cases where we just go in front of the heads of agencies and say, hey, look, I think you guys have the wrong idea. We can help.
And just to add, another initiative there is about exactly what you said, you want to scale and performance. So this is a whole bunch of initiative we internally call curation or curated bit streams. So basically, like, give me a viewable in-app inventory. So that was one of the examples. So this is yet another direction, but more or less in the same area as well.
Yeah, and that totally answered my question.
Cool. I saw another in the back. Brian.
So, given the fun that we have at GDPR, are you looking forward to e-privacy that this year?
Oh, can't wait. Can't wait. That's going to be more fun than Christmas. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's obviously going to hurt more. I don't know how, but.
Is it going to, well, I mean, do you think it's going to be more disruptive than GDPR or less?
Well, I think my guess is it's going to, and I don't know is the first answer. My guess is it's going to be a bit like GDPR where people kind of think they're ready and then they realize that they're really not ready at all. So the ones that plan ahead most will benefit, right? We don't have at this moment an explicit e-privacy plan. We're still kind of trying to figure out what a lot of people are doing with GDPR. By the way, I should mention, we're even thinking about changing our status in GDPR because, for example, with MediaMath, to do what they want us to do with this white label solution, let's assume it happens. To do that, we need to become a controller for those SSPs. Becoming a controller gives you other advantages, data rights and other things. So we're actually considering, and this involves the exec and everyone else, does it make sense to actually pivot BidSwitch into a controller? And the same thing, so people been talking about Media Grid, thank God it hasn't come up yet, but there's a question there as well. So that will impact how we think about other stuff. So it's a bit early to say, but it's a good question.
Yes, Andrew, a question about data, the current situation.
BidSwitch data.
Yeah.
Want me to pick it up?
Yeah, please.
Yes, so recently, like in the past few months, it turned out that we have to do a lot of other things to activate BidSwitch data, like including the select story, the way we activated with demand. Plus, there is certain gaps on the supply side that we need to be more clear and explicit on the way we operate BidSwitch data with supply partners. So the current decision is to kind of stall it for a while and like until we activate the channel to demand and solve how we approach the supply operations properly. And one of the considerations is that it might become a part of the grid eventually, because the grid the grid concept is much closer to what BidSwitch data is doing. Honestly, like it's basically the same. So probably it doesn't make sense to evolve those two independently, and most likely by that they merge at some point.
So the other way is there's a dependency for, say, the DVM of the trade desk to activate the distribution point for this. The question is whether that sits in BidSwitch or outside BidSwitch. And probably right now it leans a little more to outside BidSwitch, but I think probably this week and next week we'll get closer to an answer. Any other questions? All right, thanks everybody for your attention. Appreciate it.